Hi, everyone. Welcome to live stream with me, Dr. Aparajita Jeedigunta. I am the founder and CEO of AJ Rao LLC, where we believe in making the invisible visible for better belongingness. And I am also the creator of the upcoming Culturally Competent Conversations for Equity and Belongingness Summit, or the C3EB Summit. And today I wanted to, this is going to be the last live stream that I do for my channel before the summit because, frankly, I have a lot of things that I need to get done before we go live. But it's also, a chance for me to talk to you and talk about really the underpinnings of why the summit is even happening. And it all boils down to one thing, really. I'm going to get into the details, but everything about the summit that got built in 10 weeks, less than 10 weeks, actually, with 47 speakers, 9 tracks, 3 days, with over 40 hours of content, it all boils down to one thing. Inclusion is not a zero-sum game, and neither are equity and belongingness. And that really has been the message that I've wanted to get out for the longest time, and it's happening in the form of the summit. Berhinda, thank you so much for joining. And yes, I am going to be going live with Berhinda Williams on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern to talk about the summit. From her perspective, because Berhinda is one of our keynote speakers. So I'm very, very excited about that. But from this channel, this is going to be the last live before the summit starts on Wednesday morning at 9:15 a.m. So what I wanted to do today is really unpack what I just said, that inclusion is not a zero-sum game, and neither are equity and belongingness. But it does feel like we're still treating diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness and intentional inclusion as zero-sum games, as these momentary problems that can be addressed in the silos that we have created for ourselves. And the thing is, we can't. Equity, belongingness, and intentional inclusion are deeply interconnected across all aspects of our lives. This is why the C3EB Summit has 9 tracks, so that we can see how equity and belongingness are interconnected across all of the tracks, across all of the aspects of our lives. And here are just some glaring examples of how we're still being just very divisive, and we're still not coming together to shape our futures toward equity and belongingness together. Because let's start off with the biggest elephant in the room. One of the 2 biggest elephants in the room, COVID. I think one thing that, and I've said this so many times before, it was an invisible little pathogen that made all of these inequities, health disparities, healthcare disparities, employment disparities, and now school reopening disparities so salient to all of us that they cannot be ignored. An invisible pathogen made our own problems that we've been sweeping under the rug visible to us in a way, and really just smacked us in the face with these and said, deal with these, address these, resolve these, because there is no normal. There was no old normal. That old normal did not work for the majority of the US population. And there is no new normal. Normal is not a destination. Normal is a journey that we go on together to figure out what works for all of us. And that's just with COVID. Let's talk about the bigger and much older elephant in the room, equity, social justice, Black Lives Matter. What is happening now with that is something that should have started 450 years ago. But of course, our society wasn't built for that. Those in power at that time did not build our society in which all men were created equal. They didn't. They built a society that benefited a few. And we are now dealing with the aftermath of that, because it still is only the few. And when I say a few, I don't even mean all white people. I mean, it is just the top 1% of our population that is still benefiting from everything that is going on around us, while we have nearly 50% unemployment rates, while COVID-related deaths and healthcare disparities are much higher among Black communities and Latino communities or Hispanic communities, however you want to label them, where we have, where we keep getting faced with this myth that there is a shortage of diverse talent. And really, we didn't have the shortage of diverse talent, but now with these school reopenings happening, and working mothers who have no other options quitting their jobs to take care of their children, we sure as heck are going to have a shortage of talent if we don't address all of these problems in ways that are equitable to those with these needs. So equity is not equality. Equity is meeting people's needs where their needs are, right? There are so many memes about this. There are so many graphics about this. I don't need to wax poetic about this, but if you do a Google search, or if, Ruthie did a great blog post about this when she talked about financial equity, Google actually tried to autocorrect her to equality. So that is still where we are in terms of our language. That is still where we are in terms of our thoughts. On top of that, it is an election year. And we do have leaders who are in their late 70s and early 80s talking to the majority of the population that are millennials and Gen Zs. They're not being represented by this old school leadership. And we're not even talking the same language sometimes. Let's bring up another issue. Everything that's happening in Fort Hood, starting with Vanessa Guillen, I think that's how we say her last name. But then there are other missing cases right now. And the interesting thing for me about all of that that's happening at Fort Hood is everybody that's missing right now, all of the news reports that are coming up, everybody that's missing are victims of sexual assault or abuse, and they've made complaints, and these are all people of color. In the meanwhile, we have global warming. We have these crazy weather patterns with these, brush fires, tornadoes, earthquakes, in a greater frequency than we've had before. Again, all of this is happening in the middle of COVID, murder hornets, and everything else. No wonder people are having a really hard time taking care of their own mental well-being. No wonder people, no wonder Michelle Obama and everybody else, Michelle Obama coming out with low-grade depression, that has to do with the Black Lives Matter movement and the lack of equity and the continued murder of Black folks across the board. I mean, just today I was reading about Paris, a loving spirit of a transgender woman who was murdered, and she is not the only one. We have so many Black folks who've literally gotten murdered because of their identities. And on the flip side, we have people that say that it is not about race, that racism has ended, but at the same time use the murder of a little 5-year-old boy, an innocent little 5-year-old boy, to delegitimize the greater movement for equity and belongingness. And everybody that has delegitimized it, I'm not even going to knock on them, because they were coming from a place of pain, and they, but at the same time, that was used to cause divisions. Everything that's happening right now, instead of us coming together to find solutions that all of us can walk toward together to shape our futures together, we keep leaning into these divisions. And the thing is that diversity, by its very definition, think about that word, diversity. It is meant to categorize people based on their differences. And diversity is beautiful because differences are beautiful, but diversity should not be used to divide. That's where equity and belongingness and intentional inclusion come in. And that is why the C3EB Summit is happening when it is happening, because we are overdue for these conversations. We are overdue to listen to those with these lived experiences, listen to all persons of all gender expressions, all sexualities, whatever cultural orientation they come from, gender orientation, sexual orientation, religious orientation, socioeconomic orientation, across the board. The structures that have been created in America have marginalized everybody that is different from mainstream. So it is up to us to get together and listen to the lived experiences of those who have been marginalized, because guess what? They've walked the walk. They have faced the struggles. All of us who have experienced this marginalization, we have insights from our lived experiences that we really, all of us as a society, need to start listening to so that we can at least level set on the language first and then get to sustainable, implementable solutions in diversity, equity, belongingness, and intentional inclusion. And I put that intentional inclusion at the end very intentionally, because most often people say diversity, equity, inclusion, and then belongingness. But you know what? If you want to intentionally include, if you want to intentionally include yourself or somebody else, the equity and belongingness pieces are critical. That is why it's not a zero-sum game. Us being equitable towards each other doesn't take away from us. It adds to our power. And that is why the C3EB Summit is happening as a movement, not a moment. Because none of what is happening is a moment in history. Everything that is happening right now in America and around the world is an inevitable consequence of how our structures and institutions have been built to not include us or allow us to include ourselves. And the C3EB Summit is the platform that I decided to create to completely shatter and dismantle these silos that have been created, these silos that we feel like we cannot get out of, these silos that keep boxing us in, even without our permission. It is time we break these silos. It is time that we understand the interconnectedness of equity and belongingness across all aspects of our lives. And the reason I say all of this is to say it was this fire that you hear in my voice and you see in my person. It was this fire that made it happen in under 10 weeks. But of course, I wasn't the only person that had this fire. I could not have done any of this on my own. So I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge every single one of my team members who have walked the walk with me, and every single one of my speakers who are contributing their time, their expertise, their lived insights and experience, so that we can all learn together so that we can all see the commonalities and so that we can find the common grounds as human beings. You know, as human beings, our species was built with this innate need to belong. As human beings, we were built to be these social beings that are highly dependent on our communities and on our social structures. But our power structures and our social structures don't match up. So only some people have the power, and they are the ones that are benefiting. Now, again, because inclusion is not a zero-sum game, and because equity and belongingness are not a zero-sum game, if any current leader is listening to this live or later, none of this means that you are somehow going to get ousted. That's not how inclusion works. That's not how equity works. That's not how belongingness works. When we practice intentional inclusion and equity and belongingness in the right way, our table keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we have all the megaphones we need to give to those whose voices we need to amplify in this movement. And that is why the C3EB Summit has a majority of experts who identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, LGBTQIA+, or as people with visible or invisible disabilities and challenges. Because again, these are the people who have been traditionally marginalized. We are talking about a culture and a society where even in the 1950s and 60s, in the times of our parents, those who had mental issues, mental mood disorders, were thrown in a mental asylum and were treated like animals in some cases. And it's only now that we're starting to understand better about the brain, about the human psyche, and about the nature of mood disorders. So I'm not saying any of us were woke 50 years ago, 80 years ago, 100 years ago, whenever. But what I am saying is that our history has enough lessons that we can learn from to be better if we stop ignoring these lessons. And the C3EB Summit is about bringing together lived historical experiences so that we can see how history impacts us in this moment and in this movement towards equity and belongingness. So who are the people who walked this walk with me and helped me make this happen in, again, less than 10 weeks? This whole thing is happening in less than 10 weeks. And that's the craziest part of it, because I've heard so much from so many people about how it takes half a year to a year to build a summit or to build a conference, and how next year's conferences have to start getting planned now. This whole thing was built in 10 weeks. And it happened because, first and foremost, my IT team, Essential IT, thank you so much. Essential IT really walked the walk with me. And not only did they go above and beyond what my tech needs were, they are also my Pearl Plus partners, because they actually contributed and donated much of their time and labor that went into this project to bring it to fruition. So without Essential IT, the team at Essential IT, led by Brian Surowick, and the project manager is Tisha, and we have some amazing developers, this wouldn't happen. The second person that the second team member I really want to highlight is Tamar Nicole of Creative Designs by Tamar. Look her up. Tamar was my graphic designer extraordinaire. I literally kind of took these nebulous, very intellectual, cerebral ideas to Tamar, and within 24 to 48 hours, she came back with these visuals, the logo for the C3EB Summit, the graphics that you see on the social media platforms, they were all created by her, and in such a short time. And there were so many changes that she had to deal with, and she did it all with a smile on her face, because again, she really believed in the movement that was going to be created by the C3EB summit. um, I can't move forward without talking about Ruthie Bowles, my content specialist and authority marketer extraordinaire, and also one of our keynote speakers. Ruthie has been such a driving force, and Ruthie's VA, Sylvia, has been managing our social media. And oh my gosh, to both of you, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Similarly, thank you to Danielle Fitzpatrick Clark, my marketing coach, my marketing disruptor coach, and also one of the speakers of the C3EB Summit, who helped me nail down the marketing strategy overall for all of this. I couldn't have done this without you. I also have to give a shout out to Santosh Matthew, who is again one of our speakers, but Santosh is also, the ERG director for the National Association of Asian American Professionals, or NAP. And Santosh is such a good friend at this point. And Santosh actually helped me not only figure out the entire sponsorship piece, he was also a key player in helping me get the sponsorships. Speaking of that, I have to thank the sponsors that are walking the walk with us, the sponsors and the partners. Essential IT, Defy the Status Quo Marketing, Zanzibar Enterprises. Zanzibar is one of our keynote speakers. And when I approached Zanzibar about being a keynote speaker, without me even saying anything, Zanzibar actually offered help and said, how can I help contribute? Where is it that you need help? How can I help? I am a small business owner, but I am 100% committed to this. This is amazing. And so Zanzibar Enterprises, where they reverse engineer your success for you, was my first sponsor, official sponsor outside of Essential IT and Defy the Status Quo Marketing. So thank you, Zanzibar Enterprises. And of course, Nielsen, the Nielsen. The fact that because of Santosh being who he is, believed in Santosh enough to realize that if Santosh is putting his energy and effort into this initiative, that it must be worth it. And so by association, for them to realize that this is something that they can walk the walk with us and contributing their generous contributions to us. Thank you so much, Nielsen. So this is the team that it took to build this project, this initiative, this movement in less than 10 weeks. And of course, a huge hidden part of my team has been my family, my husband, who has been taking care of my child almost 100% of the time, because I have been so involved in this. My parents, who take care of my child because I've been so involved in this. My in-laws, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, who have not only been moral support for me, but then my father-in-law actually made this amazing contribution, financial contribution, because he believed in this movement so much. I couldn't have done this without this entire community behind me, y'all. And that really is what the C3EB Summit is about. Creating this community of people who are going to uplift each other, who are going to hold each other up, and who are going to walk the walk together toward equity, toward intentional inclusion, toward belongingness, because we deserve it. And of course, it goes without saying, our future generations, our kids, they sure as heck deserve a better society than what we've shown them in 2020. I know my child does. And I know all of our children do. And I know all of us who are working so hard to make sense of everything that is being thrown at us in life right now. All of us deserve a better society. All of us deserve to thrive. and use our skill sets in our own unique ways. Our structures that have been created right now don't allow us to do that. So does that mean it's time for us to rethink these structures and rebuild them in ways that does make things conducive for all of us? Absolutely. And that is what the C3EB Summit is about rethinking how we've been approaching all of these problems with diversity, equity, and inclusion through these silos and saying enough with the silos. These are interconnected problems. Let's get together and solve them. So that was the team. Oh my gosh. Now my speakers. I have 47 speakers. I have 11 keynotes and I have 36 speakers, panelists who are literally doing me such a huge favor, doing all of us such a huge favor by contributing their time and their expertise and their insights so that we can all grow together. If you go on our website, you will be able to see all of them. I am going to try and highlight them. Actually, I'm not going to try. I am going to be highlighting them over the next few days, and I'm definitely going to be shining the spotlight on them during the summit. And the great thing about this is that not only are my speakers contributing their time and expertise, but I've met so many incredible people through building this that we have a mini summit planned for November 19th and 20th of 2020 in Q4. We have a mini summit planned in February for Q1 of next year that's going to focus on Black enterprise and Black history. We have a mini summit planned for May that's going to focus on Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month and mental health. So we have 3 mini summits already planned, and we haven't even launched the inaugural summit yet. That's what this movement has already grown into. And we're already starting to think about the next year's annual C3EB summit in August. And really, that's what a movement is. That is what a movement is. And we have so many surprises for you. Actually, all of my makeup is all washed away because one of my keynote speakers, Dr. Matthew Carter, gave me some news right before I went on this live. That was such amazing news that I literally started crying. And there went all my makeup. So, but I still have my lipstick, so we're good. But everybody is stepping up in such amazing ways because everybody, those who are involved with this summit, are so committed to this movement, toward equity, belongingness, and intentional inclusion. And so we are doing, those of us who are involved, we are doing everything we can to create this movement. And it's only going to get stronger when you join us as attendees. This is a free summit. So nothing is stopping you from registering right now at www.c3eb.com, where you can hear from all of our keynotes. Our opening keynote is Kalima Johnson from the Sasha Center in Detroit. And our closing keynote is Ashley Williams, the founder and CEO of Razar, the Millennial Marketplace. So we're opening with a powerful Black woman's voice, and we are closing with an equally powerful Black woman's voice. And that was intentional. The majority of the speakers, again, are people who identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, or LGBTQIA+, or people with visible and invisible disabilities and challenges. Where else are you going to be able to get these perspectives for free? Where else are you going to learn from these teachers who have the lived experiences? I know I had a hard time learning. I had a hard time having these conversations. I had a hard time figuring out where my voice belonged. as a part of these dialogues. And you know what? The C3EB Summit platform is a platform where all of our voices belong. All of our voices, because inclusion is about all of us. And so we're going to include, and we're going to get together, and we're going to make this a sustainable movement that is going to get us to the equity, belongingness, and intentional inclusion that we all deserve. That's it for me. If you have any questions, I am happy to take them. But otherwise, I will see you Wednesday at 9:15 for the opening remarks of the C3EB Summit. And on Wednesday, we go from 9:15 in the morning until 9 at night. On Thursday, we go from 9 a.m. until 9:30 at night. And on Friday, we go from 9 a.m. until 6:30. That's a packed agenda. But again, this actually does not even go past the tip of the iceberg when we start digging deep into intentional inclusion. But you know what? Let's start with the tip of the iceberg and we'll get beneath the surface, I promise. So I'm excited for you all to walk the walk with me and be a part of this. And I'm so excited to experience the summit with all of you. And once again, really, thank you to every single person who has been such a huge part of this. All of my keynote speakers, all of my workshop presenters, all of my panelists. If I start listing all of you, we're going to be here for the next hour. So I won't do that. Instead, I am going to shine the spotlight on you during the summit and after. And I'm going to make sure that your voices, all of our voices, get heard. And that is my commitment to the C3EB platform and to this very necessary movement for equity and justice. I'll see you all on Wednesday. Thank you so much. Bye.